So one of the biggest mistakes that innovators make is when they're presenting their crazy breakthrough ideas, they tend to focus too much on the crazy part of their ideas. And what I mean by that is they try and talk a lot about what's new about the idea, what's breakthrough about the idea, what's cool about the idea. There's this feeling they have that focusing on what's new and what's breakthrough is what's actually going to make the idea resonate. But actually doing this could be a mistake. Focusing on what's new may not actually resonate with people. People are much more likely to resonate with something that's familiar. And this is supported by psychological research on the mere exposure effect. This effect was first described by psychologist Robert Zions and describes our tendency to prefer things simply because we're familiar with them. This is why it's sometimes referred to as the familiarity principle. And so when we're presenting our new ideas, it may not be a good idea to focus on the crazy parts of our ideas, but maybe try and make the idea sound familiar. This was a challenge that was faced by the team that was working on developing the movie Lion King for Disney. In his best-selling book, Originals, Adam Grant describes how this team struggled to present the idea of the Lion King because it was so novel. They first started off describing it as Bambi in Africa, but with lions. And as they worked on their scripts using this kind of framing, it wasn't really resonating and it wasn't really working. And so after a while, after doing a few revisions of the script, they then tried to present the script again to Disney executives. And it was in this conversation that another concept emerged when one of the producers described it as Hamlet. And this Shakespearean play of Hamlet really resonated with the idea of the Lion King, right? You know, there's an uncle that kills a father, and then the son is exiled, and then he has to come back and avenge his father's death and then become king himself. And once the concept was described as Hamlet with lions, it then became something that resonates. So you can see how this works, right? You take your crazy idea, you combine it with something familiar, and that gives people a hook to understand your idea and become familiar with it. So in this video, I'm going to describe to you 3 ways that you can take your crazy idea and frame it as something much more familiar. The first thing that you can do is compare your idea to something people already know. And the best way to do this is to use the "it's like X, but for Y" formula. So for example, Airbnb could be described as like Expedia, but for renting people's homes. Or like Expedia, but for booking short stays in people's homes. And so what you do there is you anchor your idea in something that people already know, and it makes it easy for them to understand how the idea might work. So this works because people are able to accept or understand new concepts by connecting them with familiar ones. So the second thing you can do is borrow credibility from something that's already proven. Your idea is new, so when people hear about your crazy idea, it might feel risky to them. And so what you can do is maybe borrow from something that's already proven and successful in the market. So for example, Starbucks was often described as the Italian coffee house concept brought to America. And you can see how this works because the Italian coffee houses were really successful and people understood that Italian coffee houses make really, really great coffee. So if you take that concept and bring it to America, you're borrowing from something that's already proven and then adding your new twist on top of that. The third thing you can do is flip a familiar concept on its head. This time, what you're trying to do is not compare your crazy idea to something that people already know. What you're doing is you're taking something that is quite familiar and flipping it, doing the reverse. Reversing something people are familiar with, or kind of like flipping accepted conventional wisdom on its head. And it's amazing how like taking your idea and framing it within the concept of flipping conventional wisdom on its head actually makes the idea more resonant. So for example, Amazon could have been described as a bookstore, but without physical books. This would have been a great way to describe Kindle, right? So you take a familiar concept and you flip it on its head. But all you're doing is you're connecting something new with something familiar. And you can do it by making it look similar, or you can do it by flipping the idea on its head. So this is how you can sell your crazy ideas, by basically trying not to sound like a lunatic. The idea itself might be crazy, but you yourself don't have to sell it in a way that accentuates the novelty or the breakthrough or the craziness about the idea itself. Instead, you can try and anchor it in something that's familiar, which makes it easy for people to understand and perhaps then start to accept it. So thank you for watching the video to the end. And if you like the content, feel free to subscribe and also share with some crazy people with crazy ideas that you feel might actually benefit from watching this video.